I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
The palace has been rocked by a revelation so dark it has left King Charles reeling.
She becomes my queen consort.
And for Queen Camilla, the fallout is devastating.
Freely, please let us not become.
After years of carefully guarded influence and power, her world has come crashing down as Charles uncovers a secret she fought desperately to keep hidden. In a shocking twist, Camilla has now been stripped of everything, leaving the monarchy and the public stunned. What was this secret so explosive that it shattered her standing forever? The truth is more shocking than imagined. Shadows behind the crown. King Charles III sat alone in the dim glow of his private library at Buckingham Palace, the silence heavy, broken only by the distant rustle of wind in the royal gardens. Before him lay a letter sealed with the royal crest, brief, formal, and cold. It carried the words of Queen Camilla's office, informing him that she would not be attending the upcoming 50th anniversary celebration of the Royal Charitable Trust. The reason given was a busy schedule, but Charles knew better. It wasn't duty that kept her away, it was indifference. That single sheet of paper cut deeper than any illness he had endured. To the world, it was just another royal notice. To Charles, it was the final insult, a sharp reminder that the woman who stood beside him in public was absent when he needed her most. The flames in the fireplace flickered before his weary eyes, and his hands tightened into fists. The crown on his head had grown heavier with every passing day of betrayal, and in that moment he vowed he would not leave this earth wrapped in deception. The memory of his darkest hours returned with piercing clarity. Early in 2024, he had lain in a quiet room at Sandringham, the pale winter light seeping through silk curtains, shadows crawling across his face. Machines beeped in steady rhythm, each sound a grim reminder that his body was failing. Cancer had dragged him to the edge of mortality, draining his strength until every breath was a labor. Yet the deepest wound was not in his flesh. It was in his heart. Camilla never came. She never called. Not a word of comfort, not a single touch of reassurance. Instead, the newspapers carried her smiling image, perfectly dressed, hailed as the embodiment of royal dignity. "Queen Camilla, timeless grace," the headlines declared, celebrating her as the face of stability. But Charles, staring at the ceiling of a hospital room, knew the truth those glossy pages concealed. Behind the glittering facade, she had abandoned him. She did not love the man. She loved the throne. She loved the spotlight. And with every photograph splashed across the front pages, the gap between their worlds grew more impossible to bridge. In the silence of his recovery, Charles reached for an old photo album resting at his bedside. The faded images spoke louder than any words could. There was Diana, her smile radiant, captured in the summer of 1987 at Highgrove. She did not need the jewels or the titles. She only needed him. Yet he had turned away from her devotion, swayed by Camilla's whispers and by the pressures of the crown. He remembered Diana's voice, trembling yet resolute, years earlier at Kensington Palace. "If you choose her, you'll lose both." At the time, he dismissed it. Now the words returned like a curse that would not release him. In those lonely nights at Sandringham, Charles came face to face with a devastating truth. He had sacrificed love, reputation, and peace of mind, only to be left with a hollow crown, and a wife whose loyalty belonged not to him, but to power itself. But what hidden betrayal could wound deeper than duty itself, leaving Charles haunted by whispers of loyalty, power, and irreversible loss? Stay tuned. The moment the crown turned cold. The breaking point came not in whispers, but in full public view. At a Buckingham Palace event, Camilla reportedly barred Catherine from wearing red, dismissing it as too flashy and accusing her of dressing only to steal attention. Yet when the evening arrived, Camilla herself appeared in a striking scarlet gown. The irony was not lost on the press. Headlines flared, and the public, once willing to overlook her sharp edges, turned with biting criticism. In an instant, her carefully built image shifted, from strong and steady consort to insecure rival. Catherine, on the other hand, rose higher. With her grace and warmth, she reminded many of Diana, embodying humility instead of competition. Charles noticed. Quietly, he began to step back. He no longer sought Camilla's input on pressing matters, skipped their daily briefings, and locked her out of his private study, the one place she once entered freely. To the outside world, the facade of harmony held for a time. But within palace walls, insiders could feel the fracture widening. Early that spring, Camilla embarked on a royal tour of Europe, a trip designed to highlight her statesmanship. Charles approved it reluctantly, sensing it was more about her name in headlines than the service of duty. He could no longer deny what years of loyalty had blinded him to. Her devotion was not to the monarchy, nor to him, but to the power the crown granted her. Distance grew. Charles stopped sharing his private thoughts, stopped seeking her counsel, and instead leaned closer to William and Catherine. In them he saw echoes of a love and partnership he had once known, but lost. He began reshaping the royal calendar with deliberate intent, placing Catherine at the center of major initiatives, even handing her Diana's former patronages, a gesture rich in symbolism. Staff whispered of the shift, and insiders began to murmur what many had long suspected. Camilla's grip was slipping. The moment of clarity arrived during a private charity planning session involving all senior royals. Camilla had been scheduled to co-chair beside Charles. Instead, he handed the reins to Catherine. Before stunned eyes, the princess outlined a sweeping mental health initiative that would later become one of the monarchy's most successful campaigns. When Camilla tried to object, Charles cut her off with a firmness that silenced the room. "We will go with Catherine's vision." Gasps followed. Camilla's face, one aide recalled, fell instantly. That evening, she confronted her husband in private, accusing him of humiliating her. But Charles no longer entertained her protests. His reply was steady, final, and devastating. "This is no longer about you." Those 6 words landed like a thunderclap, echoing through the quiet halls of Buckingham Palace. They were not spoken in anger, nor in haste, but with the heavy weight of conviction, the kind that cannot be undone once released. In that moment, King Charles drew a clear line between loyalty to Camilla and duty to the crown. And with those words, he set in motion a decision that would not only redefine their marriage, but shake the very foundation of the monarchy, leaving everyone stunned. So what hidden truth pushed King Charles to silence Queen Camilla, stripping her power overnight and shaking Britain's monarchy forever? Stay glued. The fall of a queen consort. The United Kingdom awoke to a storm unlike any other. Headlines declaring that Camilla, queen consort, had been stripped of her royal status. Whispers of a decision so sweeping and deliberate, reportedly made by King Charles himself, began to dominate the airwaves and social media feeds. Though Buckingham Palace has yet to release a formal statement, the silence has done little to ease speculation. Instead, mounting evidence points to a carefully orchestrated effort by the king to sever Camilla's privileges, financial, ceremonial, and perhaps even official. For those who remember the battles Charles once fought to legitimize her place beside him, the turn of events is staggering. Camilla had stood at his side during the coronation in May 2023, officially crowned as queen consort. a moment that symbolized both personal victory and historical vindication. And yet, barely a year later, she finds herself at the center of a controversy that has shaken the monarchy's foundations. Palace insiders suggest her access to key royal residences has been quietly curtailed. Staff loyal to her are said to have been dismissed or reassigned. Most telling of all, her financial pipeline, the royal funding that underpinned her public role, has reportedly been cut off. In royal circles, such steps are not just administrative adjustments, they are signals, unmistakable and final. To understand how far Camilla has fallen, it is necessary to retrace the path that brought her here. Her entry into royal life was forged in scandal, born from an affair with Charles that haunted the last years of his marriage to Princess Diana. For years, she was reviled as the other woman, her name synonymous with betrayal. What followed was a long, deliberate rehabilitation campaign, carefully staged public appearances, a charm offensive that leaned heavily on humility and strategic support from sympathetic advisors. By the time Charles married her in 2005, Camilla had climbed from the depths of public hatred to cautious acceptance. Yet the scars of that past never fully healed. Even within the palace, resistance lingered. Queen Elizabeth herself kept Camilla at arm's length for years, refusing to acknowledge her publicly. Only in 2022 did she shift course, declaring it her sincere wish that Camilla be recognized as Queen Consort once Charles ascended the throne. That rare endorsement cleared the way for a more prominent public role, greater financial backing, and the ceremonial weight of the crown. But unlike titles secured by birth, the role of consort carries no guarantee. It exists only at the will of the reigning monarch. And now, with Charles firmly seated on the throne, that once unshakable will appears to have shifted, reflecting a profound change in both purpose and direction. Recent months have offered subtle but undeniable clues. Camilla has been absent from high-profile events she once championed, without explanation. She has been seen less frequently at royal engagements, her absence raising eyebrows among reporters and aides alike. Then came the most telling sign. Reports that she has moved out of Clarence House, the London home she once shared only with Charles, retreating instead to her private estate at Ray Mill in Wiltshire. Individually, these moments might have been dismissed as coincidence. Together, they paint a stark picture. A queen consort slowly being erased from the center of royal life, her influence slipping away with each passing day. And behind the scenes, it all points back to one man, the king who once defended her at all costs, now making the deliberate choice to draw the curtain on her reign. So, how did a once defended queen consort become the symbol of decline? Was this Charles's justice or quiet revenge unfolding? Keep watching. Stripped of power and presence. The signs of Camilla's downfall were subtle at first, but soon they became impossible to ignore. What began as whispers within palace corridors grew into undeniable evidence. Her grip on privilege and influence had been pried away. The most telling blow was financial. As queen consort, Camilla once held access to the sovereign grant, a discretionary account that covered everything from designer gowns for state occasions to private transportation, chauffeurs, travel allowances, and an entire staff of secretaries, aides, and stylists. It even ensured security teams for her movements both at home and abroad. But reports from those close to the royal accounting offices confirm that these benefits have been rescinded. Her name, once a fixture in the household's internal ledgers, no longer appears under key spending categories. Without that access, her independence within the royal machine has been effectively shut down. The financial restrictions did not end there. The Duchy of Lancaster, a private estate yielding over £24 million annually, traditionally supports the monarch and their immediate family. Charles himself benefits from its income, and, For years, Camilla had access to its allocations as well. But sources now reveal that the king has personally ordered her exclusion from further disbursements. In royal terms, this is no small shift. It marks the severing of one of the most vital lifelines that maintained her status and mobility within the crown's orbit. The consequences extend beyond money. Camilla has also been stripped of the authority that once defined her role. As queen consort, she had enjoyed the right to sit in on private council meetings, represent Charles at official events, and lend her name to national and international patronages. But with her status curtailed, those privileges have evaporated. She will no longer appear on the roster of upcoming engagements, nor will her name be tied to charitable patronages she previously championed. Even her role in critical planning, such as the Commonwealth tours and national-level council briefings, has been erased. What remains of the title Queen Consort is now little more than ceremonial, a hollow designation without active responsibilities. The comparison to Prince Philip makes the change all the more striking. For nearly 7 decades, from Elizabeth II's accession in 1952 until his death in 2021, Philip embodied the role of consort with consistency and influence. By contrast, Camilla's departure from royal duties has been abrupt, almost resembling an enforced retirement. Visibility, too, has vanished. In the monarchy, public appearances are currency, keeping royals relevant and cementing public support. Yet Camilla has been quietly removed from major platforms. The dissolution of her communications team delivered the final blow. Without a staff to manage her press statements, orchestrate her public schedule, or shield her image, she is left exposed, voiceless, in a system that depends on careful narrative control. For a woman once defended at all costs by the king himself, the transformation is staggering. Camilla is not only losing her privileges and duties, she is losing her very place within the story of the monarchy. How could Queen Camilla fall so far, so fast, from King Charles's once unshakable embrace? You won't want to miss this part. A silence that speaks louder than words. When the first reports emerged that King Charles had stripped Camilla of her royal perks, the story ignited like wildfire across Britain. Headlines from tabloids and broadsheets alike screamed the same urgent questions. What did Camilla do? Why is Charles cutting her out? The speculation was relentless, yet Buckingham Palace chose an approach both calculated and chilling. Silence. No confirmation, no denial, not even the brief dismissals they usually issue when rumors spiral. That absence of clarity did not calm the storm. It intensified it. For seasoned royal watchers, the palace's refusal to quash the reports carried a deeper message. False stories are often shut down within hours, but this one was left to breathe, to grow, to settle in the public consciousness. Timing, as many have pointed out, could not be more telling. Since his coronation, King Charles has been determined to reshape the monarchy into something leaner, tighter, and more controlled. Earlier this year, whispers about his health created uncertainty, leaving Prince William to step forward and absorb more of the public duties. Against that backdrop, every decision Charles makes appears not just personal but strategic, a deliberate tightening of the royal machine. Removing Camilla from its center sends shockwaves far beyond palace walls. If these reports are indeed accurate, then what has unfolded is nothing short of a quiet erasure. Camilla's position as queen consort has been reduced to a ceremonial shell, a title without power, voice, or privilege. According to insiders, she has even been encouraged to retreat from public life altogether. Her role shrunk to little more than symbolic appearances, if that. Unlike the position of the sovereign, which is grounded in law, the role of queen consort is fragile. It holds no constitutional protection and exists entirely at the discretion of the monarch. With one decision, Charles exercised that discretion in full. No parliamentary vote, no public debate, no opposition. Because in the monarchy, the king's word is the final word. The practical consequences of this decision are stark and humiliating. Camilla will no longer be styled as Her Majesty in official documents. Her portrait, once paired with the king's in state institutions, is expected to be removed. Even ceremonial recognition within the line of succession will disappear. Access to royal residences, which she once enjoyed freely, is now restricted unless she is accompanied by a senior royal. What was once a life of constant privilege, staff, security, funds, and visibility has been methodically stripped away. It is a fall unlike any in recent royal history. Only months ago, Camilla stood beside Charles with all the honors and access that the crown could bestow. Now, she is left confronting an uncertain reality. No official budget, no defined role, and no guaranteed place within the monarchy's future. The loss is not merely symbolic, it is tangible. Power, influence, wealth, and status have all slipped from her grasp in a matter of weeks. But the questions linger in the silence the palace refuses to break. Was this a move long in the making, part of Charles's broader plan to streamline the monarchy, or was it triggered by something Camilla did? Something yet unrevealed? Is the king bowing to public pressure, or is he acting to contain private tensions within the family? Whatever the answer, one truth is already undeniable. The crown that once shielded Camilla has now turned its back on her, leaving her exposed to the weight of both history and rumor. So why has King Charles suddenly turned cold on Queen Camilla? And what secret consequence could this dramatic rupture unleash next? The long shadow over Camilla's crown. The unraveling of Camilla's royal standing cannot be understood without stepping back into the long, troubled history that has defined her place within the monarchy. For decades, she has carried a label no other modern royal has borne with such weight: Britain's most scrutinized royal. Her journey from mistress to monarch's wife was not a smooth transformation. It was one of the most divisive episodes in contemporary royal history. Even as she worked to present a polished, controlled public image, the truth was far more complicated. From the beginning, Camilla's relationship with Charles rested on fragile, scandalous ground. He fought bitterly to legitimize her place at his side, often against the will of the public and the skepticism of his own family. The scars of that struggle never fully healed. For many, she would always be the shadow cast across Princess Diana's memory, the woman seen as responsible for breaking the heart of the people's princess. The backlash was so fierce that only years of carefully orchestrated public relations, cautious appearances, and finally, Queen Elizabeth II's unprecedented endorsement in 2022 allowed Camilla to be recognized formally as Queen Consort. Yet even that acceptance was more political maneuvering than heartfelt embrace. To many within the monarchy and beyond, her title was tolerated, not celebrated. Once installed as Queen Consort, Camilla leaned into her role with vigor. She expanded her patronages, stepped into more high-profile engagements, and enjoyed greater visibility on the world stage. With this rise came an increase in staff, privileges, and financial support, but her growing presence brought its own storm. Insiders whispered about mounting costs, lavish wardrobes, private travel arrangements, and expensive accommodations. It did not sit well with those pushing for a leaner, more cost-conscious monarchy. Senior royals, wary of public scrutiny over palace spending, began pressing for budget cuts, and Camilla's expanding influence made her the most obvious target. The concerns, however, were not just financial. Behind palace walls, tensions simmered between Camilla and Charles's long-trusted advisors. Some accused her of crossing invisible boundaries, trying to exert authority over areas where she had no formal standing. She was said to involve herself in appointments, media strategies, and even the king's scheduling, behavior that felt to many like an attempt to operate as co-ruler rather than consort. This perception grew sharper when reports surfaced of her clashes with royal planners over scheduling conflicts, along with murmurs of tension with Catherine, Princess of Wales, over visibility and seniority at official events. In a monarchy where hierarchy is not just tradition, but the very foundation of order, such disputes were seen as destabilizing. What made matters worse was the relentless weight of public opinion. Polls consistently placed Camilla at the very bottom of royal popularity rankings. Unlike Catherine, who enjoys widespread admiration, Camilla remained divisive at best and resented at worst. Even the grandeur of the coronation failed to soften views. For some commentators, watching her crowned alongside Charles felt like rewriting history, a denial of Diana's rightful place. The pain of those years was never forgotten, and the crown on Camilla's head was, for many, a symbol of betrayal rather than renewal. In the end, the combination proved too heavy to ignore. Internal resistance, public dissatisfaction, and financial scrutiny converged to create a pressure that demanded action. For King Charles, who had spent years protecting Camilla's place at his side, the moment arrived when preserving the monarchy meant cutting her influence down. And with one decisive move, he did exactly that. So how did years of secrecy, strained loyalties, and mounting costs collide to force King Charles's final break with Queen Camilla? Stay tuned. Charles's reckoning and the final break. Insiders close to Buckingham Palace suggest that King Charles's decision to strip Camilla of everything was not the result of a single moment, but rather the culmination of years of political pressure, personal reflection, and unspoken truths that could no longer be ignored. For months, advisors had quietly warned that continuing to fund Camilla's increasingly lavish role risked alienating the public. Charles, a man who had long spoken of slimming down and modernizing the monarchy, understood that hesitation would damage not only the institution's credibility, but also his own. Remaining silent or inactive was no longer an option. Yet behind the polished surface of strategy, another influence was at play: Prince William. Now more powerful than ever, William's presence within the monarchy has grown alongside Catherine's, and with Camilla's expanding visibility overlapping with their carefully built image, tensions became unavoidable. Palace whispers suggest that William, guided by both loyalty to the crown and sensitivity to public mood, may have urged his father to reconsider Camilla's role. The balance of the monarchy could no longer accommodate competing figures, and Charles had to choose. The decision did not form overnight, but once Charles came to see through what many described as years of pretense, momentum gathered quickly. For decades, the royal family had attempted to reframe history, to rewrite the narrative of a scandal that scarred an entire generation. But Diana's shadow lingered, her story too powerful, her memory too cherished, her image too enduring to be silenced. For years, Charles had buried his regrets under duty, protocol, and a marriage that never fully mended the gaps left by his first love. But with time pressing on him, and health concerns reminding him of his own mortality, Charles appeared determined to set things right, not only for his own conscience, but for the monarchy's future. In recent appearances, Charles has carried himself with a new kind of focus, as though each step were deliberately measured. He has already begun reviving Diana's unfinished work, planning to expand her charity initiatives in mental health, children's welfare, and social causes close to her heart. The symbolism is unmistakable. The crown she once wore in sorrow is now guiding the monarchy into an era shaped by compassion, transparency, and humility. Working alongside William and Catherine, Charles has quietly begun passing on responsibilities, but also something more: his trust. Catherine, though never expected to replace Diana, has carried herself with the same warmth and quiet dignity that once defined the people's princess. She has built her reputation not with grand gestures, but with meaningful ones, comforting families in hospitals, championing mental health, addressing addiction, and supporting vulnerable communities. For the public, Catherine's popularity is not born from her title but from her authenticity, and Charles knows this. Elevating her role is not just a matter of succession, it is an acknowledgement of the monarchy's need for emotional continuity. Perhaps the clearest sign of this shift comes from Charles's most personal decision, rewriting his will. Every asset under his control, estates, investments, and private possessions, has been directed to William and his children, with Catherine entrusted as the sole guardian of a charitable fund created in Diana's name. A private memorial garden at Kensington Palace has also been commissioned, ensuring Diana's memory will remain open to the public. As for Camilla, the conclusion is as stark as it is final. She will receive nothing beyond the modest pension secured for her as a former consort. No estates, no titles, no role in the monarchy's future. The woman once elevated to Queen Consort has been reduced to a ceremonial footnote, her influence erased with one sovereign decision. In royal terms, there is no coming back from this. So what do you think? Was King Charles's stunning decision to strip Queen Camilla of everything a long-planned reckoning or a shocking reaction? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.